Hello, this is Jerry Jenkins. We're going to show you how to install Python, the newest version, into Windows 10, and also PyCharm, which is the most popular IDE or editor development environment you can get for developing Python. And this is for beginners to install, and we're also going to show you how to actually write a program and set up PyCharm correctly, and we'll show you some things that you may not want to do. So first we're going to show you, you want to make sure you don't have Python installed. So I'm going to go to the Windows search and type CMD to bring up the command prompt. This is sometimes called terminal or command prompt or command line, and we're just going to type the word Python and hit enter and see what happens. Now if you have installed it or someone has installed it on your system, it'll bring up this and you're actually in a version of Python. And the problem is if it was installed from the Windows Store, it's going to become an issue. It doesn't correctly work for everything you need. So we're going to have to uninstall it. And now if it brought up the Windows Store itself when you type the word Python here, which will look like this. It will bring up Python 3.7. So if you see this bring up, you don't want to install it this way either. This is installing through the Python store, so you don't want this copy. So just a warning to avoid problems. And in fact, if you do look at the reviews for these and 3.8, it just doesn't work right. So we have to remove it since it is here. So we have to go to the app, and this is how you would remove any incorrect version. Go to the app and features, you scroll down and find Python, everything starting with Python, click on it and say uninstall. So now the best way to get Python, in fact the only way, is you go to your browser and you go to the website python.org. Oops. There we go. And very simple. To get the latest version of Python, you go to Downloads, and let me make this a little bigger. Okay, so you go to Downloads here, and then you move your mouse over to the right. On this button, it'll say Python 3.8 or whatever the latest version is. 3.9 will be coming out in October, so that would become the latest version then. And as the version increases, this 5 will increase to 6 and so on. So go ahead and click here, and it'll start a download. It's going to ask if you want to run here. So you say yes. And it's doing the download. Now you can see on the mouse pointer it stops spinning, so it actually has it downloaded and it's starting to install. And there's a problem with Windows here that you have to warn you about. It's because it looks like nothing's happening now, but actually behind this window is another window. So we're going to close the browser, and you can see it's actually opened up to install script. So this is very confusing in Windows 10. It's been this way for a year now, that you have windows opening up behind what you're doing. You don't know it's there unless you pay attention to the extra icon that pops up here. So this is the Windows installer. So we're going to show you the steps you need to do here. So first you're going to make sure you click Add Python 3.8 to Path. This is important. If you have a IDE like PyCharm or other popular IDEs, it may require this path to be in there for it to find Python. Also, you might want to write down this path here. This is called a path, which is where Python is actually installed. So this information you may want to know someplace, and we'll show you it does show up once in a while, but it might be good to just copy this information down for your reference so you know where it's installed. Go ahead and hit install now, and we're going to say yes to this. Now you notice everything it's saying here, it's saying 32-bit. Don't worry about that. 32-bit Python works perfectly well for almost anything you would want to do. There's just some technical reasons that if you need to use more than a certain amount of memory, you need to go to 64-bit. But most of you can't afford to buy that much memory for your computer. So there's no problem running this in Windows 10 64-bit version. So once it's all installed, the last thing we want to do here is disable this path limit. So just click here and say yes, do that, and go ahead and hit close. Now Python's installed, so now we'll show you what it looks like. And this is a way you can check that it's installed. You go back to the command prompt, type in Python, and you can actually do -- version, and it'll tell you that what version's installed. So if you get an error, or when you type that it brings up the Microsoft Store, that's for some reason it did not install. So you have to go back to the install step. So now we're going to get PyCharm. So we go to our browser, and you go to the address jetbrains.com/pycharm, and it's pronounced PyCharm, and hit enter. Now JetBrains makes a lot of programming products. They make the most popular product for programming on Android devices, called Android Studio, and then that's sold through Google. It's a really big company, and they make some of the best development environments for doing programming. So whether you want to do Python or C or C++ or Ruby or Java, they make things to do all of those. So, and a lot of these, if you're a student, you can get them for free. If you go to the store area, or where it says buy, and you look for the education or student discount, you can actually apply to get all those products for free, including PyCharm Professional. You will need either a EDU address, email address from your school, or you'll need what's called an international student card. So you can look for details on that on buy. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and agree to these cookies, which is new on a lot of websites now. Click on download, and it's going to give you two choices. So if you're a student and you get that deal, you go to professional. But for learning, the community version, which is completely free to anyone, is the way to go. So we're going to hit download on community and hit run. So it's installing. I'll speed up this part of the what you see until it gets installed. Just like before, it's downloaded, but you don't see much change here. But if you look down here, there's a blinking security icon. So if you click here, you'll see that it's ready to install, and then it opens up on top of your browser. So I'm going to go ahead and close the browser, and then it says welcome to PyCharm Community Edition. Click next, and we're going to click next here, and we're going to make some changes on this install options. We want to make 64-bit launcher. That's going to put a shortcut on your desktop. We're going to associate Python files that end in .py with this program, so they'll automatically open from Finder or from the Windows Explorer. And we're going to set up the path variable, which will allow programs to find PyCharm from command line. So let's go ahead and hit next, and then next. Okay, so it's ready. So we're going to have to reboot the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and reboot it, and I'll come back to you when it's rebooted. Okay, so now we're rebooted. So you'll see that you can start it from the shortcut here. You'll see it now shows up in the program list for recently added, and it's added the PyCharm, and then it also shows these are the two things it added when we installed Python. So we're going to be using Python through PyCharm, so we don't need these two items to refer to them for your information. Now the easiest way to start it up, I find, is just go into the find box and type py, and it should find the PyCharm, pyc, and there it is. In fact, I start all my programs that way and don't use the menus anymore. So since it's the first time we've started it, we just have to agree to its policy, decide on whether we want to share our data, pick a theme, whether we want a dark theme or a light theme. So I'm going to choose the light theme. We're going to skip this, which is more advanced plugins you can get. And this is the screen you get when you first start PyCharm without a project open. So when you program in PyCharm, it organizes every time you want to do a program, you work in what's called a project. And a project is just a folder that has some settings in it. So it's just a folder on your computer. So when you come in here, if you're not currently working with a project, you can create a new project, which we'll do. You can open an existing project, and you would normally list projects you've already worked with on the left, but we don't have any yet. And then once you get more advanced, you can use a version control system like GitHub or Git to GIT to manage versions of your software. So that's more advanced. So we're just going to go ahead and create a new project. Now, in PyCharm, it's developed for people that are really good at programming and experts. And the trend these days is to use instead of using directly the Python that was installed on your computer, is to set up a virtual environment that refers to it and allows you to install modules just for your project. For each project, and that's called a virtual environment. And this gets complicated for someone who's new to programming. So we're not going to use the virtual environment, which is this whole section up here. We're going to use an existing interpreter, which means what we've just installed. So you're going to click on existing interpreter, and it will say no interpreter. So we have to go find it. So the way we find it is we go to System Interpreter here, and it should automatically find the interpreter that we install. And you'll notice this exactly matches what I said you should write down and refer to. So we just, once that's selected, hit OK. And it's going to set this project up with this interpreter. So we have to do one more step in a little bit to make sure it always defaults to that, so you don't have to do this every time you create a new project. The other thing they've added just recently to PyCharm is it will create a main program for you. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to leave this checked and hit create. So here's your basic window for working with PyCharm. So it always comes up with what's called tip of the day, which is things to learn about using the program. You can say don't use the tips if you don't want to see these. You can leave them on and just close it when you open up a new project, and it'll give you a new tip and shortcuts. Where you can turn it back on if you don't show them is in the help menu. You'll see it has an option to turn it back on. And we're going to hit close. The next thing you're going to see is a little warning down here that happens in Windows. So Windows Defender, if you're not aware, is the program in Windows 10 that protects your computer from malware. And it looks at everything, every file, and then examines it, which slows things down. So this is saying, do you want to exclude the directories for PyCharm and the project you're creating? So we want to go ahead and do that. So we're going to click on this and say automatically configure it, and say yes. to the security warning. And then you'll see a little message that's completed here. Okay, so now a little where are we at? So we're going to do one more thing before we start talking about this. We're going to set it up so that the system interpreter is always the default. So you go to the File menu, and you go to where it says New Project Settings. This is settings that are applied to new projects when you create them. Click on Settings for New Projects, and then click on Project Interpreter, Python Interpreter. And then where it says here No Interpreter, we're going to pull this down and choose Python 3.8. So that'll set up the system interpreter, and click Apply. And then hit OK. Sorry, you could have just hit OK. Alright, so now we're all set up. If we create new projects, we don't have to set the interpreter. So over on the left side is a directory of where you're at. So this is your main project. And this is a file automatically created for you called main.py. And here's what's in the file. And it basically has a method in Python that prints out a string which is hi and name. And then the main program, and you'll learn about this when you start learning about Python, if underscore name, which is the program that's running, is equal to main, in other words, you ran this as the main program, it'll call print hi, pass it a string called PyCharm, which will print out. To run this, you just hit run, and it runs it right here. So you can use this, and you can just remove all this and write your own program. It also has a link here to getting help on using PyCharm or PyCharm. So we're going to show you another way of doing this. You notice our project name is Python project, and we just let it default to that. So we also need to show you how to name your project. But this is how the project looks. You'll have this in a file. If you go to a folder, go up one, there we are, and you go to Jerry Jenkins, and then you find PyCharm projects here, and open it up, and there's your folder with the project. So if you go and look at what's inside there, all it has is this, which is main.py, and Windows doesn't show you the extension, so if you're an actual programmer, you might want to turn that on. So you have to go to, I think it's File. They keep moving how you do this. Change folder and search options. And you go under View. And then down here it says Hide extensions for known file types. Unclick this. Hit OK. And now it's going to show you the actual name of the file. So that name of the file actually has .py after it. And I suggest you do this if you're going to be programming, so that you see the real extension. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. This other folder here is called External Libraries. This refers to your area of where your installed Python is. So these are resources your program are going to use, and you can go and look at these when you become more expert. But it's not useful right now. I'm just going to collapse that area. So that's one project. Let's close this project. So I'm going to say Close Project. And you'll notice it lists that project here, and we're going to create another new project. So this time we're going to give it our own name, so I'm going to just make a hello program. So I'm going to call the project hello. I'm not going to create a main script. So this is probably what you would probably start doing. Hit create. And then what you do is you right click on hello here, and you go to new, and you go to Python file, and then we just give it a name. It'll add the .py for us, so you just hit enter, and you notice it made hello.py. Now it won't have the run button ready, so you have to right click anywhere in your editor area and say run. And it won't do anything because we don't have any code, but it does run. And notice now this is highlighted. So now the run button, it interprets this as your main program. So if you had a lot of Python files in the hello project, you have to pick one, which is the one you start running. That's how you normally write a program. So now we're just going to say print, and in quotes, hello, new programmer. And we're going to hit run. And you'll see it runs down here, hello new programmer. And that's one way you can run. You can also run in the terminal. So you'll see terminal down here. This is just like opening command line. So the way you would run here is say Python. And it tells you where you are. So you're actually in the folder for the project. And I'm going to just say hello and hit tab. It should find the name of my file if you type enough of it, and just hit enter and it runs it here. Hello new programmer. There's also a thing called the Python console, and this is similar to what's called, and we have to allow access to this. So the Python console is similar to idle, which is you read about when you start learning, and you can just try some code here. So I can say print 1 plus 2, and it's going to evaluate that expression and print the result. I can also just say 1 plus 2, and it's going to evaluate that and return what it creates in memory. So if you read about IDLE, which is also available here, this is just doing what this program does that comes with Python. And one more thing, if you do Python programming, you may have to install new modules using what's called the pip command. So an easy way to do that is you go to terminal and you just say pip install and the module you want. So maybe it's PyGame, and that will install it. You can also install it going to File, Settings, and you go to the Python interpreter under your project, and it has things. It has modules that are installed listed here. So install a new module, you click here, and if you want PyGame, you type PyGame, and you would click, and then you'd hit install this package, and it would install it as well. So there's several ways of working with things here. And so enjoy running Python and PyGame. Check out the videos at JetBrains for more on how to use PyCharm, and also check out my other videos on writing Python programs, and I have hundreds of them you can look at. So thank you for your time.